Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Advisory Board podcast. I'm Dave Hansen, the host. Today we've got an exciting character with us. His name is Mark Jensen, aka Marcus T. He's also he's been a semi-famous punk band entrepreneur. One semi-famous. He's also one of the early managing partners over at Get Found First, a pretty well-known SEO PPC firm, and he's been managing a ton of very large multi-unit PPC campaigns for groups like Extra Space Storage. So I wanted to bring him on early in the podcast series because he's kind of a witch in the space of PPCs, known it and tracked it for many years. And multi-unit, multi-location PPC is a totally different animal than running it just one campaign for one site. So Mark, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, anything you want to add, any color to you before we jump into any content?
You know, I've been in internet marketing now for about 8 years, had a lot of exposure to all the different channels in digital marketing, including running that agency, which I think kind of helped me think more like a business owner in this. So going in and running this large account for Extra Space Storage, I think we're spending about $52 million a year on 1,800 locations. Yeah, having that business hat when you're working with accounts this size, it's been really helpful, and I hope through our discussion I'll be able to kind of highlight some of those nuggets I've been able to find.
Yeah, good. Well, we're gonna pull them out of your brain. So thanks for getting
them out there.
Hey, so let's just start kind of high level, like what's changing. So PPC is always changing. That's the one thing that never changes with PPC is it's always in a state of flux. Thank you. Why don't you share a little bit with us about what you've noticed changing in the last maybe 90 days, 6 months?
Okay. Yeah, I mean, first off, I'd caveat this with saying when we talk PPC, it's almost exclusively Google, right? If you're not on Bing, you should go there. That's got a generally lower cost per clicks. You can get good conversions there. But there's just not the volume. Like PPC is ubiquitous with Google right now, so we'll kind of reference it by that. The first thing I'd say is COVID, right? That's on everybody's mind right now. So much negative news right now. So let me give you some potentially good news is it's not the nail in the coffin for every single business out there. I've seen a lot of companies really thriving right now, thinking of like home renovation or, oh gosh, like mold removal, these different projects and things are people are finally starting to get in on. These places are actually increasing in volume right now. So what I'd say is that, hey, not all industries are impacted the same and not all locations are impacted the same. So something you should do if you're having somebody manage your account is go and ask them, hey, is there opportunity to actually take advantage of this right now? Mm-hmm. And not in a slimy way, but just like, hey, there's more interest. So let's lean in.
Yeah, and just a thought to share on that, because I've got an interesting insight. One of our partners, they generate leads for home service companies and at a very large scale. And one of their directors, and I'll keep this, I won't share any details of who shared what, but they shared that actually HVAC, plumbing, several of the home services are way up. Emergency plumbing was way up, like
right.
People are flushing like napkins and paper towels down the toilet, I guess. I don't know what's
right. We just like are discovering our ineptitude at using our own household things.
Yeah, like, well, that works in the office toilet. I guess it doesn't work. I don't know what people are doing, but they're spending more time in their homes, and I'm glad you brought it up because it's an area that we do a lot of work in at Client Tether. But that niche of I'm in my house constantly. Now I'm on my deck working, and my deck's crap. I want to replace my deck, or I want to redo my floors. We need to get new carpet. Like we have seen an resurgence of leads flowing into painting, plumbing, HVAC, all sorts of places. Where a lot of business owners, I think, have been pulling back, like, "Ooh, save money, I'm afraid." And so, what's happening to the competition for those clicks?
Right. It may not be the time for austerity for a lot of companies right now. Absolutely. Little tidbit out there, like addressing COVID in your ads could actually be a good move right now too. So if you've got somebody managing this, look at cleanliness, leaning into no contact, things like that. Those are performing really well right now.
A question for you. I have somebody who told me that if you reference coronavirus or COVID in your PPC ad copy, that Google's blocking those. Is that right?
I could say, I'm not sure. Yeah, the only ways I've seen it lean into is not specifically naming COVID, but just addressing the value adds that a company wants to bring to the table.
Which is frankly a better psychology of marketing anyway. Stop talking about the features, benefits. Talk about just the benefits, the value that you bring. So
Yeah.
okay, that makes sense. Yep. Sorry to put you on the spot. Cool. So any other trends that you are seeing right now as far as how people should be using or are using PPC?
Yeah, I love a good buzzword. So let's say a couple: big data, AI, automation. It's been around.
That's great.
Wow, who is not excited right now? I don't know. But yeah, I'd say that those are still top of mind. Google's rolled out some of these automated machine learning features in the past, but they're getting better and they're getting better. This is the way that things will be moving is automation. And I think one of the things that we're going to start seeing is a difference in how campaigns are being made. And this should be changing already. It used to be when you would create a PPC campaign, it would be extremely broken out, right? You go and you look at anything that was built in, 4 or 5 years ago, it's going to be very, very intricate. With these automated technologies, they need a lot of data, right? So if you're super broken out, you're actually minimizing the data that this machine learning can grab. So
yeah,
it may not be super popular with some people that want all that control, but having more condensed builds will actually benefit this type of technology more. So that's what I'm going to expect to be seeing is more and more consolidation, fewer keywords, fewer ad groups, things like that, and really leveraging some of this automation in exciting ways, honestly.
Yeah, well, I have a background in that a little bit, the natural language processing, machine learning space for being a translation. And if you want to train an engine, I've seen engines that can translate patents in certain languages as well as humans.
Yeah.
But to have very specific content in a very tight content domain, but lots of volume flowing through it. So that makes total sense.
Right. Got to give the signals.
Yeah. Exactly. Yep. Very cool, man. Yeah. Well, I've got a couple of questions for you, Mark, since you're the expert, if you're ready to be on the hot seat. Yeah. Brace yourself. So let's shift gears back to multi-unit, because that's kind of the focus of what we want to talk about today. And there are a lot of people that run franchises, that are running dealership programs, that have hundreds of locations. And this is a big challenge for a lot of them. I've talked to them, they've told me, which is what you think of this. So talk to me a little bit about challenges. Like, how is it different? Like, why is it challenging to run PPC campaigns for multi-unit franchises or otherwise?
I think one of the, especially as you start getting bigger and bigger and your portfolio gets larger, it can easily become unmanageable. And this is especially true if you've grown over the past few years. Things that you're not thinking about is standardization, right? You're just getting off and you're excited and you're building this business. So what you're going to have is you're going to kind of have this Frankenstein account. Now, what I don't want to do is just lean into, that's really tricky to manage. But also it's really tricky as a business owner to know what in the world's going on when you can't do good roll-up reporting, like what products are doing well, what services are doing well, what regions are doing well. All these things are a little tricky if you don't have good standardization and taxonomy. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of a crazy one. It wouldn't seem like high impact, but just having a standardized taxonomy is going to help your reporting and roll up so much.
Okay, now, so let's say you're a layperson and you don't understand the word taxonomy. That makes you think of the deer head that's on your wall in the living room. Like, how do you standardize your taxonomy in an account that's got 200 locations?
Sure, it's just a standard naming convention. Mm-hmm. So you could have, you can organize it so many different ways, but whatever is most useful for you is what you should do. Generally, you could have something like, location plus product plus, maybe a particular keyword type group, or you can just, stick with the product, some way that you can create an automatic reporting that can easily roll it up. And the quickest way to roll up is just to make sure everything's standardized. You can pull the reports, hey, what are my cost per acquisition for XYZ product across the board? And that's really helpful to make sure you're hitting margins on the right services.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, good point. We're going to come back to that on KPIs, but this is kind of a precursor comment for that.
Okay.
Another question I have, Mark, and it makes me think about the Wild West. I had a discussion with an attorney that's in this space, in the franchising space today. We talked about a potential client that he's introduced me to, and just how it is really the Wild West on content. Like sometimes each location owns their own website rather than having microsites with corporate controlled content. Is that a potential black hole or problem when you're trying to centrally manage PPC and yet they own their own local content?
That's a hard situation, absolutely. Because you increase the number of stakeholders by as many of those people you have. So now the PPC manager has that many bosses and this many assets to be able to manage. It's tricky for sure. I'd say ideal scenario is that you create some standardization, or at least a standardization in like, hey, you've got to have tracking up. You've got to have, and I'll talk about this later if we get into it, but you've got to have the phone number of the person to call if things go bad, you know, and that's got to be on hand. Now, I'd say at very least that you need to know the contact. You need to have some standardization in tracking, and just some rules in place. Hey, you're going to be part of what we're working with. You got to hit these minimal thresholds. Gosh, it always comes back to standardization when it comes to scale.
Yeah, I agree. Well, if you want consistent data and performance, then I agree. Yeah, cool. And tell me, are there anything, I know when you mentioned to me earlier, like building out some scripts and some things to really automate reporting, like how do you integrate that sort of, I want to say stubbed in technology to help automate this more or make it more visible?
Yeah, I mean, you bring up another one of the huge challenges in scaled accounts is it's just really time intensive, right? You want to get in there and make all these different tweaks and things in it, and it gets really, really messy. So again, how do you create standardization that creates individual tweaks? You have tool sets, right? Hey, bid up when XYZ scenario happens by Y. This can create a different effect where it's most effective across the board, but you still have that like, hey, this is our singular rule. You can, I've seen people create their own technology for bidding, your own technology for optimizations. If you don't have that, there's a lot of out of the box stuff. You can leverage Google Scripts, which can walk through all your different accounts and make particular optimizations for you. You can tie in Google to Google Sheets and create your own kind of ad hoc reporting, or you could even tie it into something like Power BI. If you're using, BigQuery, you can use tables if we want to get really, into it with that. So there's a lot of things you can do, and there's so many tools out there. You may even get to the point where you're like, okay, well, I need something bigger to manage all this. There's lots of tool sets out there like Kenchu, DoubleClick, Marin, and all these things can be great technology to leverage to be able to handle all that at scale, including the reporting.
Yeah, very cool. Well, I think somebody was probably falling asleep in the audience right there because we got really nerdy. But but good stuff. Really good tips. And I think for those that are more advanced and more mature in their business models, these are the types of things they're going to want to pay attention to. Is what types of management platforms can I use to help automate these things rather than duct tape and baling wire. But the smaller guys that don't have the budgets and the staff, it's all duct tape and baling wire for a while. But there are still some tools it sounds like they can use to lace it together.
Right, and I would say something like Google Scripts and Excel. I mean, gosh, that is the duct tape and baling wire of kings. You still use that stuff no matter where you go, and I'd say it's a great foundation.
Yeah, sounds good. Hey, well, talk to us a little bit about, I mean, we could spend a lot of time on this, but what are some of the tricks of the trade? Like, what are you seeing? I mean, you were managing an Extra Space Storage, $52 million a year in PPC. That's greater than most people's revenue that'll be listening to this podcast. So tell us a little bit about that. That's a killer experience. Like, what were some of the tricks or tips you would share, tools that you use to manage that kind of spend and optimize it?
You'd be shocked to hear how much we used Excel.
Not so much. Most businesses I know that are big, they use things like that in Power BI.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You just pull that data down in lots of pivot tables and graphs. We had the benefit of having a great data science department that really helped us out. If I had to say some tips and tools of the trade is data integrity.
Mhm.
I know we're getting
Wow, another
crazy here.
buzzword. There you go.
Can I say I'm a marketer? Just like in it, I've drank the Kool-Aid.
Yeah.
Throw out all those.
Yeah,
Yeah,
by the way, Mark, speaking of buzzwords, we've got a hard stop coming up. So
okay.
I'm just kidding. No, I just want to throw a buzzword into my own. Go
Oh no, that's a good one. Well, we'll circle back.
All right, carry on. So you were
Okay.
just about to share some tips.
Yeah, I'd say this is great foundational information for everybody is own your data. Um, if you're not tracking what you're actually bringing in, it's an issue. Now, I had mentioned automated technology before, right? Like if you've got machine learning and you're not feeding it data, I mean, what happens is it stops performing or it starts learning incorrectly and giving you bad results. This is the future, and it's not only preparing for that, but it's understanding your value that you're bringing in. So making sure you own your ecosystem of data. Ha, more buzz.
Yeah.
Right? But for a small local business where it's expanded across like a lot of multiple locations, you're probably going to get leads 3 different ways, right? You're going to have a form fill, you're going to get a phone call on your website, or you're going to get a phone call on the SERP, whether that's through your search engine result page, whether that's through your Google My Business page or from ads, that contain your phone number.
Mhm.
You need to be able to track all that, and you need to be able to put it into Google, and you need to know when it breaks, and you need to know how to fix it and make it not break as much. That's like great ground rules for everybody. And as you get larger and more complex, the more challenging that becomes, but the more integral to what you're doing it becomes. But that's ground level. Like you could have one location, and I would say to you, know that guy you call when your data breaks, and know when that breaks.
Yeah, have some flags that fly when it breaks. Yeah. I mean, and you bring up an interesting point here that's critical, which is tying the data back. I heard you say something, you were edging on the line of like ROI, like what's the value to the organization of what you're doing? Do you mind if we shift into that for a minute? Like, how do you show ROI? Like, how do you really track, the true value of the PPC that you're managing, the conversion rates, all that kind of stuff? What have you seen work really well in that space? Because I think there are a lot of people that would listen to this. They would say, well, we're getting great, the cost per click, and conversions and blah, blah, blah. But I don't really know how to tell my CEO or even my CMO to tell my CEO that what we're doing is making a difference. And this is the difference.
Right. Yeah. I mean, you just got to know, you got to figure out a way to move it to the end value. When I've worked with smaller businesses in the past, it's okay to have a rule of thumb. You say, hey, I know from past experience that 10 phone calls gives me 2 clients. I can work with that number, and I can make advancements based off of that. That's okay. When we start getting into good and great here, more buzz is when we can actually start tracking that all the way through. We get a CRM, right? And we push things back into. Salesforce can push it back in there. I believe Client Tether can as well. Is that right?
Yeah, we definitely track the sales life cycle all the way through conversion. Yeah.
So, I mean, that's a way you do that, right? And that's how you sell it to stakeholders. You just make sure you tie it all the way through, get as close to the dollar bill as possible. I mean, that should always be your quest as a stakeholder at that level, is how can we get as close to that dollar bill somebody hands us as possible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's kind of where the baton hands to sales in a larger organization, right? Or corporate hands to the franchisee or to the dealer. The biggest challenge that I see there from my perspective, right? The other end of the equation is it's just consistency of behavior. If the leads come in and you have a system, shameless plug alert, that can automatically engage that lead and convert it at a very high rate and track that all the way through the life cycle, so you can see what does the tail look like? What is the conversion rate from a new lead to contacted to converted to scheduled to closed, right?
Absolutely.
Simple life cycle. If you can track that data, the biggest thing that's going to get in your way is actually the practitioner at that location following protocol. So, hey, I talked to a customer, Markham is contacted. or make it so the system's almost brainless and hey, move them into this plan, which automatically marks them as contacted or marks them as quoted. Like the more automation you can get there so practitioners have to push as few buttons as possible, the better, the more likely your data is to be consistent.
Absolutely, and that consistency is super key. Again, I mean, that the consistency of having that data available makes you able to make the right decisions.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, absolutely.
And visibility into that data. I'll throw visibility in as another buzzword, but
hey.
you have to see it. I mean, and that's where a lot of, I've seen franchise systems and dealership type programs they break down is they do a great job on your side of the house where they generate leads. And then like, hey, we sell these leads, guys, how's it going? They're like, oh, they're not very good leads. I'm like, well,
right.
give you some data and like, maybe 15 out of 30 we talk to you like, holy crap, like where's the data? Like I need some real response. They're like, how about Luis Javier? Like this conversion, tell me what happened. They don't know.
Right.
So that's a problem.
And I mean, I think you bring up a really good point here too, is that, PPC doesn't exist alone. You know what I mean? Like it's part of this ecosystem. You could be driving all these leads. You hear that back like, oh, these are junk leads, but, get your house in order. You know what I mean? Like you have a junky website, you have people that aren't picking up the phone or salespeople that aren't following up. I mean, that's part of the whole pie you're putting in the oven.
Yeah, 100%.
If you like that analogy. It's summertime, cherry pie, apple pie.
Yeah, probably apple pie for me. Yeah. No, but you're right. You're right. And I've been guilty on the other end of that side, leading a sales team where marketing was generating leads. And frankly, our team was telling me, hey, they're garbage leads. The reality is we didn't have any technology or any process other than like an admin running around trying to make sure someone picked up the phone and called someone. That was our automation where I was. It was tragic. But that was it. And the sales team kept saying, hey, they're just not good leads. They're not good leads. And some of them weren't. They needed to dial in PPC. That's a real thing. Like, well, we were getting people that were looking for like, birth certificate translations. And I was trying to work with groups like, Charles Schwab and translate their enterprise stuff. Like it was, mismatch, but it wasn't all bad. It was mostly sales follow-up. I'd say at least 50% sales follow-up issues. Yeah. Coming from a sales guy, that's self-incriminating. Well, let's shift gears a little bit because I think we could stay in that rabbit hole for quite a long time. Are there any kind of going back to tips and tools and tricks on the advanced side of things? Like let's say you're running a very large, mature ecosystem of PPC. Any other tips or tricks or tools that you'd recommend in a more advanced setting where people are more sophisticated?
Yeah, and I guess I would communicate to business owners on this one too. Now, I keep hitting on that, but like paid search shouldn't just be an island. This needs to be an arm of what you're doing. And so this creates the environment that you want. Just break some stuff, right? Like here's what you don't want is you don't want to engage with an agency and say, hey, here, hit this KPI. And then they're afraid to not hit that KPI, right? And what that robs you of is innovation. You've got your numbers you need to hit, but as soon as you set that line in the sand, for better or for worse, I mean, it's a good thing to get your numbers, but I think we can argue it's a bad thing not to get innovation. Consider breaking some stuff. Set aside a budget for experimentation. Encourage the people that are doing PPC to come up with something different and new, and have a little bit of pocketbook to be okay with some small margins. And if it doesn't work, I mean, stand by that and say, yeah, that was okay. We learned X, Y, Z. Before you go into that, I mean, absolutely make sure your team is presenting a solid case for what they're doing. But like every step of this should be a step forward. You just don't want to be stagnant.
Yeah, because everything's going to shift out from underneath you, and then you'll find yourself on the backslide. Yeah, that's a good idea. I mean, larger companies have the budget for it. I know people are wary to spend because of all the the sequestering and the economy taking a bit of a dive with COVID-19. But there's a reason why groups like J&J and P&G are behemoths in their market because they spend billions of dollars on R&D. And if in your department you're not dedicated to some R&D, then you really aren't going to grow. You really need to spend time learning. That's smart.
Right, and it doesn't have to cost a lot. If you're working in multiple locations, you may have locations that your average spend per location may only be $200 to $500 a month, something like that. That's reasonable for a lot of single locations. What if you had a budget of, $200 to $500 a month? That's do whatever you want with one location, do something exciting with one or two locations. It may not be equivocal across the board that this is going to work, but you gain something that could work. And now you've got new testing ideas and things that can move it forward, because those wins can really pay off.
Yeah, no, that's smart. Hey, are you, what are the things, I mean, you mentioned PPC is part of an overall ecosystem if you're doing it right? It's not just, here's our marketing strategy, it's just PPC, now go close leads. What are some add-on tools or things that you feel like you should couple with PPC to make it even more effective?
Ooh, tools or channels?
Channels. I'm thinking more channels than tools.
I'd say, can I say this as a PPC person? Freaking diversify. Google's gotcha, and they're great. I've worked with them really, really closely. Their teams, and they're really great, but they are out for a buck. Google's going to become increasingly monetized. So see what you can do to diversify. Facebook can be used as an acquisition play. Absolutely. Get on it. Try it. Even Instagram can work for some products and services. Get on to your SEO strategy. It's like, that's a solid base. And if you invest in it right and you find the right people to work with, that can set you up really, really nicely. And you get synergistic effect from it, right? Studies have shown that when PPC and SEO are running together, and you get solid results from both, it actually increases both of those more than they would have gotten. So see what you can do to earn the cert. I would even lean in and say, hey, look at aggregators. Go type in your business service for a location. This is questionable territory for some, but I would say, okay, type in your service, right? Are you seeing Thumbtack? Are you seeing Home Advisor? Are you seeing these different things as well as yourself and maybe some competition? Here's the ideal SERP, right? Search engine result page. Your ad is in the top pack. Your ad is in the map pack. You're in the map, the map pack. You've got an organic ranking. There's no competitors in sight, and it's just lead generation, because that at least gives you an opportunity to get business. So I would not ignore that opportunity as well.
Great. It's funny. Last week I learned something from Mark Spencer over at Consumer Fusion about the map and making sure you're getting placed when and it has more to do with reputation. But if you have good SEO and you've got and you have and you have a 4.0 or better on your overall review, then when somebody types in best carpet cleaning, best window service, best whatever, then it'll pull you up. But if you're below a 4.0, you won't even show up. So I think even though it has nothing to do with PPC, even reputation management has to be a key component, because you can have the best SEO and the best PPC in the world, and if your reputation sucks, then you won't even show up. They won't even, you'll stay under budget, but you won't be getting any leads from it.
Absolutely. It is so tied into it, because the Google location ads actually tie into your Google My Business pages. So like reputation management, I mean, this is an ecosystem, right? It's not just one channel, like everything needs to be working together, and that reputation management is critical. Reply, look for the review, ask for the review, train your people to get the review. Like all of this plays together really importantly.
Yeah. Sorry, that was almost a shameless plug, but we're not going to go down that road.
Like client tether?
I wouldn't say it. All right.
No, it's good.
Shift gears quick. So talk to me a little bit, Mark, about how do you know? So a lot of these folks that I work with, they outsource, and in the multi-unit space, there are some people that do a good job. There are also some crazy expensive agencies out there that sell hard and deliver okay. So how can you tell if you're paying too much or not getting enough from your outsourced PPC partner? And you've been on both sides of the fence here, so I think you've got some good insights to share there.
Right. I mean, at the end of the day, look for bottom dollar, right? Are you getting results, and does the overhead of this agency or employee plus what you're making makes sense. I mean, I say that the bottom line, draw the line in the sand. If that's not working for you, you got to figure out something different. I guess I would look at what's a quality employee and a quality vendor. Do they push you, right? I mean, that's a really good sign. Let your ego be deflated a little bit. That's okay. You want somebody to push you. You want somebody to talk to you like a business owner as well. If you're getting people that talk to you like a business owner, understand your business a layer or two deeper than the channel they're involved in, that's a great sign that you're getting or you will be getting value from this person, as well as if they're challenging things and ideas. I think these are all really quality ways to tell if you're getting a good agency or employee. With that said, maybe some visibility into the pricing of agencies would be helpful. I don't know. I would say typically a minimal retainer will be somewhere around $500 a month. Then you get into what's the hourly. And if you look kind of behind the scenes on what an hourly is, sorry, let me look. I looked up on Credo, a digital marketing kind of service marketplace, and they had listed out the different PPC hourly wages. And from running my own agency for a while, or managing partner of the agency, this is not far out stuff, but the typical range is between $100 to $200 an hour behind the scenes to cover overhead, hit some margins, that type of scenario. So, I mean, one way you can look to see, hey, am I getting that out of it, is you can get access to the change history, right? Some accounts don't like to, or some agencies don't like to give you access to the account like that, but you can scroll through that change history, say, hey, is my account being optimized? I would put a caveat on that I wouldn't hold people's feet necessarily over the fire all the time for that, because an account can be over optimized. And that can sometimes be worse than under optimizing. So I'd say that's one way to check to make sure, hey, is there activity happening in my account? Again, have your benchmark performances, and then if the value works for you or not, I mean, that's your call. Option would be go for a consultant, right? They're going to have cheaper hourly rates typically than an agency that needs to cover overhead, but it's an option out there.
And if you know anybody, let us know, Mark. I'm kidding. No, Mark does some consulting work as well. So shameless plug for Mark. But no, but that's a good point. The nice part about the consulting route, and I've done lots of consulting myself, is you don't have a horse in the race. Like the only thing you care about as a consultant is trying to help them come up with the right strategy to assess what they're doing and how effective it is. I like midterm engagements where I'm there long enough to help them execute and get things going, and then make sure they know that they're driving in the right direction, and then back away and let the machine run. Like that's an effective consultant. And I'll just give a word of warning. There are also consultants out there that are lifers, meaning their whole goal is to, well, I've got to share this. I was in a meeting with several CEOs, and one of the guys was a consultant, and he's like, and this guy right here, he points to somebody in the room. He's like, Bob's been a client of mine for 20 years. And I was like, oh, you must be a terrible consultant. That's like, he puts you on payroll, man. Like you should have a clear outcome and result, unless you're a life coach or something like that, where you want to have an ongoing relationship and consistently changing goals. And I don't want to undersell what the guy was doing. He was a genius guy, but I just thought you don't really want that consultant who's like, well, let's get a 6-month and then a 12-month and let's have an evergreen extension. Like you want a consultant that's going to be data-driven, outcome-driven, and then in and out. That, in my mind, you can disagree with me if you want, but if you do consultants, that's what you're looking for. Otherwise, it's an agency disguised as a consultant.
Right, absolutely. You kind of want to work yourself out of your job. That would be the ideal, or become a board member in the case that you were mentioning.
Yeah, might as well, right? Add it to the board and cut your costs. Yeah, cool. Well, talk to me a little bit about, we did talk before about metrics. And this is an important part of making sure that your in-house or your outsourced PPC is really performing. What are some of the key metrics that you have to be paying attention to? And maybe give us one that a lot of people don't pay attention to. You kind of did with the, change, like the change history. That's not really a metric necessarily, but what are some of the key metrics that you track that have helped a lot in what you do?
Okay. Let's say we have core metrics, and then we have those kind of exciting behind the hood ones. So as the business owner, you want to be concerned with the cost, the value, and the volume, right? So we want to cover those metrics. So we have what's our advertising costs in there. We have how many conversions i.e. our leads are we generating, and how much do those cost? So that would be our cost, our conversion numbers, and our cost per acquisition numbers. These are probably the bottom lines of what you want to be looking at. If you've gotten to the point, you can even add ROI in there. That's the number that you can get into AdWords. Great. These are the absolute baseline numbers you should be looking at. From there, we need to be seeing, hey, how are we doing efficiency wise, right? So we're going to look at things like our click-through rate. So this is how effectively our ads are doing at changing people's searches into actual clicks to our website, right? That's a good signal. Are we seeing movement up? Are we seeing movement down? Does that indicate, hey, are we doing something incorrectly, or is the marketplace changing? I would add to that, same with the cost per click, right? This can say, hey, are we doing something different, or is the marketplace changing? Are people getting more competitive in the arena? And then we can look at things like our quality score as well, or is everything looking relevant? That's an important one too. We can look at impressions, also great base metrics to see, hey, is demand increasing or decreasing? Great stuff to know.
Yeah, and if you're tracking it, and this is probably, back to your point about even at a large organization using a lot of, spreadsheets, pivot tables, things like that. I mean, you've got to look at longitudinal data, right? Like, what is it today? That's great. But if you don't know what it was yesterday and the month before and 2 months ago, so you can have a trend line, then you can't really track and take action on things, right?
Absolutely. We should be looking at year over year where available. We should be looking month over month, quarter over quarter, week over week. I don't find any use in day over day, even week. Day over days are not data. Yeah. But if you get a 90-day breakout, step down of all the different weeks, that's a really great way to build something like you build a graph or a waterfall, something from that. Really helps you understand the trend lines of where you're moving.
Yeah, that's smart. Yeah, well, I'm a bit of a nerd, so I completely understand how important that is, and even outside of PPC marketing, but we won't go there today. and it's probably time for us to wrap up. I don't want to go too long, and I appreciate the time you've given us so far, Mark. But do you have a couple of? I'd love a good, bad, and ugly story, or if you've got like a really cool experience you've had and how PPC has been super effective, even a funny one. Share a couple of insights with us that are more narrative as we wrap up.
Yeah, I look at PPC sometimes as like the field of dreams. If you build an ad, it will be interacted with. I can't tell you how many times I've seen a new account or campaign get built up and something completely irrelevant is clicked on. You could have something like self-storage, and then somebody's trying to store like data, is one, or I don't know. All sorts of crazy stuff, right? If you put it out there, go look in the search queries and you'll see some crazy things. Let me just say as a kind of mystery to that, there are so many adult terms that you have to add as negative keywords all the time. If that will give you a taste of something you're going to encounter in there. It's crazy stuff.
Yeah, I've got to share just a funny anecdote. So our son, Skyler, who you've met, when he was a little kid, there's this funny video I put on YouTube. It's just a long time ago. It was hard to share video back then. So if you want to share video with your family, you put it on YouTube and then they can watch it. And I put something in the subject line was like, Skyler, raspberry, tummy blow, or just like something like that. Cause he's like blowing raspberries on his younger brother's stomach, and it's hilarious.
Yeah.
To me. Well, we got like 27,000 views of the video. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's really weird. And then I realized after, I was like, oh no. Like I have adult terms in the subject of the video, and it showed like, kid skin. And I was like, I bet there are a bunch of pervs watching this video, and then shut it off because they realized it's not what they were looking for. So yes, negative keywords, and
Yeah.
it's an ever evolving like a lexicon of schmut out there you've got to pay attention to. Yeah.
Let that be a lesson to all you out there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, so I interrupted you though. Any other, can you think of any other interesting anecdotes or things that you could share as a wrap up?
Yeah, landing pages, right? So the page that your ads go to. We had this client, I think it was like Reverse Mortgage or something like that. Their website must have been built in the 1990s, right? Like GeoCities or some crazy stuff like that. It's like marquee scroll and like visitor count, stuff like this. Like it was super old. So we took over the account and we were like, we got to change this landing page. We got to get this website back on place. Let us show you how, a new landing page will really change the day. So we put in there, I put my best designer on it. It was all set up. It looked great, like all the best practices. It couldn't have not won, and yet it didn't. And we tried not once or twice. We tried probably at least 3 times, and we couldn't get it to beat this, Windows 95-esque landing page. It was crazy. So test everything because you just never know.
Yeah. So did you roll it back and put the marquee scroll back on? Is that what the magic?
Yeah, we swallowed our pride and we let there be a marquee for a while.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I think we eventually got it figured out, but that first take did not.
Yeah, I love it. Well, test. I mean, that's really what it comes down to. I forget, is it Malcolm Gladwell who wrote Fail Fast? I forget who wrote that book, but it's a crucial aspect, I think, to what you're talking about in PPC, any kind of marketing, any kind of sales, is be willing to try it, but also measure it and be honest with yourself, put the ego in check, and then say, that sucked. It didn't work. Let's go back to the old crappy 1990s website. It converts better, and don't be afraid to do that.
Yeah.
Cool. Great advice from a great man. Mark, thanks for your time. And thanks everyone for being with us today.